Hello everyone, I am Mrs. Padmashri from SNS College of Engineering, Coimbatore. Today I am going to explain the topic in machine learning called regression. What is regression? Regression is the process of predicting a continuous value. If we take any data set or any real-time example, if we want to predict the continuous value, we are going to use the concept regression. So today I have the example of a car manufacturing company where day-to-day life they are going to manufacture many new cars. This is the data set of a car manufacturing company where it has the fields engine size, cylinders, fuel consumption and CO2 emissions. There are so many data points or the values given here. And what is the question is, I'm going to predict the car number 9 which is not yet manufactured. Okay, but it is ready. It has engine size of 2.4, cylinders 4 cylinders and fuel consumption is 9.2. Only the value that we are going to predict is CO2 emissions. This how to predict. So if you see this, all the values of CO2 emission, these are all the continuous value based on these fields like engine size, cylinders, fuel consumption. Okay, so the thing that we are going to do is we need to predict the CO2 emission of the car which is going to manufacture it. Okay, so how to predict this? Based on the previous value or based on the previous continuous value of CO2 emission. This is a concept called regression where we are going to predict a continuous value. So, is that possible to predict continuous value for anything, for any data set? Yes, we can able to do by the concept of regression. We can use the regression methods to predict the emission of CO2. So, there are two types of variable involved in regression. One is a dependent variable, the other one is independent variable. So, from the name we can say a dependent. It's going to depend on something. So, dependent variable or the state, or we can say it is a target variable and it is trying to predict something. And when we say the independent variable, they are independent. They are not going to depend with any factors or anything. Okay, they are the explanatory variable and can be used to represent the causes of states. So there are two types, dependent variable and the independent variables. Here, so as I already said, regression is a process of predicting the continuous value and our main aim is to predict the CO2 emission of car number 9 which is not completely manufactured yet, but it has the engine size, predicted engine size and cylinders, fuel consumption. So in this complete data set, we are going to identify now which is the dependent variable and which are all the independent variable. Okay, so as I said, independent variable, those are independent, which is not dependent on anything, right? So engine size, if we take the fields, engine size is an independent variable. It is not dependent on anything. So engine size and the number of cylinders may differ for each and every car. Okay, so cylinders, fuel consumption, on all these three fields we can say it is categorized or it is called as independent variable, which is the dependent variable in this data set? CO2 emission is the dependent variable. Why we call this as dependent variable? Because based on these three fields, we are going to predict the value of CO2 emission of a car. So, this we cannot manipulate or we cannot calculate without these three fields, right? So, we need to check for what is the size of the engine, the number of cylinders used and the fuel consumption. So, based on these values, I am going to predict the CO2 emission of this particular value. CO2 emission of the car. Okay, so I can say these are a dependent variable and these are all the independent variable. So we can say it is a dependent variables or the continuous value. So regression is a process of predicting a continuous value. So here we can plot a graph which is independent variable versus dependent variable, where we can easily find out what is the regression, line of regression. So the graph is plotted with x-axis we have the independent variable and y-axis we have the dependent variable, and here are the data points, some data points present we plotted between the x and y axis. These are all the points, and the line, we have a straight line. So the straight line is called a line of regression. Okay, it is a straight line. So dependent value should be a continuous and should not be a discrete. So this line represent a continuous. It is not a discrete or different value. So the dependent value which we say should be a continuous and it cannot be a discrete value. And we say the independent variable or the variables can be measured on either the categorical type or the continuous measurement scale. So now we will discuss about what is a regression model. Okay, so regression model, we are going to build a model based on the prediction of the continuous value. Same example we are going to take and we are going to build a model. So what type of model we are going to build? So here we have a historical data showing the details about the past data about the car, maybe including cylinder, engine size, consumption, CO2. So which we have already discussed this example. So this database, or we can say the data set, which contains the data about the previous model. We can say the past data or past data set or the previous model. So with the knowledge of the previous data set, we are going to build a new model. That is called as a regression model. Okay, with the help of the previous values, we are going to predict what can be the new one or the new model. See, with the data available here, we are going to build a model. That is a model of a car. We use a regression to build the regression estimation model. So with the past data, we are going to build a model. So the model that I'm going to build is a car, and I'm going to estimate or find out the value of CO2 emission, expected CO2 emission. So with the help of the historical data, model has been developed, a new car is made, and we are going to find out with the previous value what can be the CO2 emission of this new car. So model is used to predict the expected CO2 emission for a new or unknown car that is not at completely manufactured. Only we have done with the number of cylinders or engine size, consumption, and yet to manipulate the value of CO2. So how we can do this? With the previous data or the historical data, the model has been trained in order to build a new car, and we are going to evaluate or find out the value of CO2 emission. So this is regression type. So till now what we have discussed is the model. What is a regression and how to design a regression model. And now I am going to just explain about the types of regression. There are two types of regression. One is the simple regression and other one is the multiple regression. So simple regression is further classified into two types: simple linear regression, simple non-linear regression. Okay, and multiple regression is further classified into two types: multiple linear regression and multiple non-linear regression. So simple linear or simple regression, the same example we will take because that will be easy for you to understand. Predicting CO2 emission versus engine size of all cars. Okay, here with in these two fields, see, we have CO2 emission is one field and engine size is the other field. So I am going to predict the CO2 emission based on the size of the engine, which is I am going to use only one field. So in such a case, if I use only one field to predict my value, that is called a simple or single regression, linear regression. Okay, so the CO2 emission is predicted with only one field called engine size. And whereas in the multiple regression, it is a multiple linear regression. Both are linear. Okay, linear we can say it is a straight line. The data are not distinct. The data lies on the same straight line. If I say non-linear, the data are not in a straight line. The data are in discrete manners. Okay, this is the difference between the linear and non-linear regression. So when we discuss about the multiple regression, say I am going to predict CO2 emission based on the size of the engine, and also I am considering the other field called cylinders. So how many fields here I am considering? 1 and 2. One is engine size, the other one is a cylinder. 2 fields. So if I predict the value of anything can we can take CO2 emission based on more than one field in the data set. More than one field means I am considering engine size as one field and cylinder is a second field. So here I am considering 2 fields. So if I consider the multiple field, more than one field for predicting my value, then it is called a multiple regression. So this is a different types of regression model. So simple regression is when one independent variable is used to estimate a dependent variable. It is either linear or non-linear. As I said, linear is a straight line, non-linear is a discrete line. Okay. So example, I am predicting CO2 with only one field or only one variable called engine size. Now, multiple linear regression, when I use more than one independent variable is present, the process is called multiple linear regression. Example, CO2 emission is predicted based on the engine size and the number of cylinders in any given car. So, depending on the relation between dependent and independent variable, we can find out whether it is coming under linear or non-linear regression. Thank you all. Thank you for watching this video.